Yes, it is. Welcome in Warriors Live on 95.7 The Game as we get ready for Warriors basketball as they begin a 6-game road trip today, and it begins in Atlanta, then Miami on Tuesday, New Orleans on Friday, San Antonio next Sunday, Memphis next Tuesday, the Lakers next Thursday. That is the 6-game road trip for the Warriors, which they will at least begin without Stephen Curry. We'll get to the injury report coming up in just a little bit, but Stephen Curry not only not playing today, he is not with the team in Atlanta. I'll tell you all the details you need to know about that in just a little bit. But this is Warriors Live here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you. Warriors Live, as always, presented by Xfinity. Stream sports from the best seat in the house with Xfinity. Bring on the good stuff. The Warriors enter this one at 41-29. They're 18-15 away from Chase Center this year. The Hawks at 33-36, and they are a 500 basketball team at home at 17-17. This is a Hawks team that is going to be not necessarily in the postseason, but in the play-in. They're essentially locked in as a play-in team. They're 7th in the East. The Pistons are in 6th, one spot ahead of the Hawks, but they have a 5-game advantage, and the Hawks only have 13 games left. It's really difficult to make up 5 games against a quality team like Detroit over the course of just 13 games. So it seems very, very, very likely that Atlanta is at best going to be the 7. They're also locked into at least being a play-in team in some shape or form. They are the 7 right now, a game up on Orlando, who is the 8 seed, 3.5 games up on Chicago, who's the 9 seed, and 4.5 up on Miami, who's the 10. And then if you try to find the team that might be fighting for one of those spots, you got to go all the way down to Toronto in 11. But they are 5 games behind the Heat, who are 10th. And if we're focusing specifically on Atlanta, Atlanta has a 9.5 game advantage on the first team out of the play-in. What does all that mean? Essentially, Atlanta is locked into a play-in spot, but they could be anywhere from maybe 7, 8, or 9. They're not going to be 10. They're probably going to be either 7 or 8, which means they're playing for home court advantage in that first play-in game, and they're playing for the right to most likely avoid Cleveland in the first round, although if you are the 7th seed, that means you're going to have Boston waiting for you. You ultimately might actually prefer to play Cleveland in the first round. Not that you feel great about either of those options, but if you were the 7 or the 8 seed, you're going to have a really, really tough first-round series against either Cleveland or Boston. But the Hawks, they're under 500, 33-36, but they are still fighting for a lot right now in the East. And the Warriors, they're fighting for a ton themselves in the Western Conference. Again, the Warriors are 41-29. They're still sitting at 6th in the West, a game up on both the Clippers and the T-Wolves. But given the T-Wolves' recent losses, they lost to Indiana, who was resting their 3 most important players last week, and they also lost to New Orleans earlier this week. They did since respond and beat New Orleans last night, by the way. But since those 2 losses occurred for Minnesota, I think the Clippers have now become the bigger concern for the Warriors in terms of Golden State trying to stay out of the play-in tournament. Remember, the play-in seeds are 7 through 10. The Warriors are the 6th seed right now. The Clippers are the 7. The T-Wolves are the 8. Mathematically, the Warriors are a game up on both, but they have the advantage against Minnesota because Minnesota's played 2 more games, and they have 2 more losses. The Warriors, 41-29. The T-Wolves, 41-31. So what this means, with 12 Warrior games left and 10 Minnesota games left, plus with the Warriors having the tiebreaker over Minnesota, the T-Wolves have to be 3 losses better than the Warriors the rest of the way. The better way to put it is the Warriors have to be 3 losses worse than the T-Wolves the rest of the way. If the Warriors go 9-3 over their final 12, which the Steph Curry injury is probably going to determine whether that is realistic or not, but 9-3 is certainly possible. If the Warriors go 9-3, Minnesota would have to go 10-0 just to pass the Warriors. If they go 9-1 and the Warriors go 9-3, the Warriors would finish ahead of the T-Wolves. If the Warriors go 10-2, if they go 11-1, if they go 12-0, the T-Wolves don't have a chance to catch them. So the Warriors can't ice Minnesota out even if they just go 10-2. And I know 10-2 seems like a pretty tall task, especially when you're looking at least one game here today, maybe two, who knows, maybe 3 games without Steph Curry. But as a result of those 2 extra losses for Minnesota and the Warriors having the tiebreaker, I think for the moment, Minnesota kind of is threat number 2. Threat number 1 is now the Clippers, who are 40-30 to the Warriors 41-29. A game behind as well, but just 1 in the loss column, 1 in the win column, not 2 in the loss column. And the Clippers also have going for them. They have the tiebreaker over the Warriors, and these 2 teams have a head-to-head matchup. So even if you're only a game up and that matchup, by the way, is at the end of the regular season, literally the last regular season game, if these 2 teams are separated by a game and the Warriors are the team that's ahead as the final regular season day comes, the 6th seed may come down to that game between the Warriors and the Clippers. So I think threat number 1 for the Warriors in terms of grabbing the 6th seed, it is the Clippers. I think we're still going to keep an eye on Minnesota scores throughout the rest of the regular season because they could put a run together. I mean, they had won 8 in a row just recently before they had suffered a couple of losses. But threat number 1, it's way, way, way more likely the Clippers are to catch the Warriors than the T-Wolves are to. So keep an eye on Clippers games specifically, but also keep an eye on Grizzlies games because the Warriors now only a game and a half behind the Grizzlies in the Western Conference for the 5th seed. The Grizzlies have now lost 3 games in a row. The Warriors only a game and a half behind Memphis for the 5. What's interesting is if the Warriors become the 5, that might mean a first-round series against the Lakers or the Nuggets. It might be better for the Warriors to be a 6 because there's a chance that Houston could be the 3. And that's not terribly far-fetched, although they've won 9 consecutive games, and they've skyrocketed all the way up to the 2 seed in the West right now. So it's still too early to figure out exactly what spot you'd want to be if you are the Warriors. All you know is no matter the opponent, at least in my opinion, maybe some out there disagree. In my opinion, no matter who the opponent is, I'd want the 6 and avoid the play-in, and I'll take whoever is at 3, whether it's the Rockets, the Lakers, or the Nuggets, or the Grizzlies, although that seems unlikely. I'd take that over having to survive through the play-in. But that's kind of the update on the Western Conference standings. Again, I think the Clippers are threat number 1, the T-Wolves are threat number 2, but keep an eye on Memphis because there is a shot the Warriors could catch the Grizzlies for the 5. The 5 is the highest the Warriors are going to climb. They're 2.5 behind the Lakers and the Nuggets. Both the Lakers and the Nuggets, though, have the tiebreaker. So the Warriors catching those teams, they'd have to be 3.5 games better than those teams the rest of the way. And again, with only a handful of games left for the Warriors, they have played 70 games, 12 games left. It's going to be difficult for them to make up that kind of ground. So I think the highest the Warriors could possibly go is 5. The lowest they could possibly go is 8. Most likely is still probably 6. And second most likely is probably 7. If I were to gauge likely spots for the Warriors, I'd probably say 6th most likely, 7th second most likely, then probably 5th third most likely, and 8th the fourth most likely. Very, very, very likely the Warriors will be one of those 4 spots, 5, 6, 7, or 8. It all depends how these teams around them perform, and of course how the Warriors perform as well. Speaking of just before we move on, I'll tell you about Steph's injury. Meaningful games around the West today. Not a lot. Bucks and Kings at 7. Bulls and Lakers at 7:30. The Kings, I threw them on there because they are the 9 in the West right now, but the Warriors are up by 4.5 games. 5.5 games over the Kings. The Warriors would have to lose out for the Kings to have a shot to catch them. That's not going to happen. The Kings essentially are too far gone for the Warriors to worry about, but just keep an eye on that one. And then Bulls and Lakers is the only other meaningful game in the West. In fact, it's the only other Western Conference team playing, the Lakers. The Lakers, Kings, and Warriors are the only teams in the West playing today. That's the only other one to keep an eye on. And if you are rooting for a potential Houston first-round matchup, you probably should be rooting for the Lakers to win so they could catch Houston for the 2 seed in the West. You want either the Lakers or the Nuggets to win a lot of their games down the stretch, so one of those could catch Houston so they could slip down to the 3. So maybe, I know it's not an easy thing to say, but maybe Warrior fans should be rooting for the Lakers tonight as they take on the Bulls. That game's at 7:30. And that makes it a little more likely that the Rockets might slip to the 3. Right now, the Rockets have a 2-game edge on both the Lakers and the Nuggets. But I think it should be in the Warriors' interest for one of those two teams, Lakers or Nuggets, to win as many games as possible down the stretch, which might push Houston down to the 3. But we shall see. That is a conversation we will continue to have as the season moves along. All right, it's Warriors Live here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you. As always, Warriors Live is presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you'll get the fastest internet to all of your devices. Let's get to our injury report, which is brought to you by Boxer & Gerson, Northern California's premier workers' compensation law firm, helping injured workers get their lives back for over 40 years. For more information, visit boxerlaw.com. Let's start, of course, with the Warriors. Steph Curry out with a left pelvic contusion. He suffered it late in the third quarter on Thursday against the Raptors. Warriors were down by 5 at the time when Steph went out, and they ultimately came back and outscored Toronto 34-26 the rest of the way to help them win that basketball game. Steph, though, did reportedly try to sway the Warriors to allow him to come back into that game. That was good sign number 1. Good sign number 2 was that the MRI the Warriors sent him to take late Thursday night came back negative, which revealed no structural damage. Good sign number 3 is despite the fact that he is not with the team in Atlanta today, he's going to be reevaluated on Monday, which is ahead of the Warriors' next game. They play in Miami versus the Heat on Tuesday. So good signs there all the way around. I think this is probably going to be a 2-game absence for Steph, because after the Warriors play tonight, again, they play Tuesday in Miami, then they don't play until Friday in New Orleans. So you're going to have, after the Tuesday game in Miami, you have Wednesday off, you have Thursday off, and then you play Friday evening. So there is plenty of time for Steph to feel better, for his tailbone area to feel better, and maybe that means he suits up Friday against the New Orleans Pelicans. If he does not play Friday versus the Pelicans, the Warriors' next game after that is San Antonio on Sunday, a week from tomorrow. So I would say 3 games would probably be the max that I would expect Steph to miss, but I think there's a chance we only see him miss 2 games. And considering what it sounded like when he hit the court hard on his backside on Thursday evening, I thought it was going to be a whole lot worse than that. So I think the Warriors, they dodged a bullet there. But again, for today's purposes, with our injury report brought to you by Boxer & Gerson, Steph Curry is out. He will be reevaluated on Monday, and we'll, of course, have the update for you when it does come down here on 95.7 The Game on Monday. The only other Warrior on the injury report today is GP2, Gary Payton II. He is questionable. He did not play on Thursday versus Toronto. He's been dealing with left knee inflammation. I think the Warriors really missed him, by the way, on Thursday. That was a tight game, and the Warriors' defense was not good in that basketball game through 3 quarters. They really, really missed GP2. And by the way, as I speak, he has been officially upgraded to available. So Gary Payton II will play. He will play. He missed just 1 game with that left knee inflammation. He'll still be wearing a face mask after he fractured his nose on the last road trip. But he will be back and good to go for the Warriors today, and that is a good sign as they try to deal with Trae Young and a high-scoring Atlanta offense. Meanwhile, for the Hawks, their half of the injury report, again brought to you by Boxer & Gerson. Trae Young has been dealing with right Achilles tendonitis. He is probable and expected to play. Karis LeVert, right knee soreness, also probable and expected to play. And then a trio of Clint Capella, Jalen Johnson, and Larry Nance Jr. are all out. Couple of big men for the Hawks, and Jalen Johnson, a really young player, has been playing really good basketball this year, but out with an injury. Clint Capella also likely going to miss the rest of the regular season. Those 3, Capella, Johnson, and Nance, all out today for the Atlanta Hawks, and that is our injury report brought to you by Boxer & Gerson. I was talking about it a little bit earlier, that Bulls and Lakers game. Let's just get it out of the way with our out-of-town NBA game of the night, which is sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. As I mentioned, there's only 3 Western Conference teams playing today. The Warriors in Atlanta, the Bucks and Kings, and then the Lakers hosting the Bulls. Those are the only 3 Western Conference teams that are playing. There's only 5 games total across the NBA today. But the one we're going to focus on is Bulls and Lakers from Los Angeles. This is a Bulls team that, of course, has not had a great season, although you look at where they are in the Eastern standings, and they're in the play-in despite the fact that they're 30-40, and they were more sellers than buyers at the trade deadline. This just goes to show how top-heavy the Eastern Conference is, and once you get to the middle of the pack, you get pretty rough basketball teams. Let's just look by example. The Chicago Bulls are the 9 seed in the East. They're 30-40. If you were to have a 30-40 record and be in the West, you would be only better than 2 teams in the West. The Pelicans and the Jazz both have been absolutely terrible this year. 16 wins for the Jazz, 19 wins for the Pelicans. The Spurs are 30-39, and they are the 13th best team in the Western Conference. 30-39 in the East. Again, it would slot you just ahead of Chicago for the 9 seed. So that's the difference in these conferences. And it's not just like the standings. It's not just like, well, just take, the Warriors and put them in the East. The Warriors would be the 4 seed if they were in the East. But it's also the opponents and who you're playing. It's not like baseball where you have like the even schedules. You don't play your division foes nearly as often anymore. In the West, you play your fellow Western Conference teams a whole lot more than you play teams in the East. You play each team in the East twice. The Warriors, for example, are playing the Rockets 5 times this year. Like, this is also just the better teams that are in your conference, the more challenging your schedule is. And the fact that the West, despite having those challenges, has let's see, 8 different teams that are 10 or more games over 500, that's pretty darn impressive. And as you begin to gauge how many wins it might take for the Warriors to get the 6 seed, or whichever team to get the 6 seed, it might be 50 wins. It might be 50 wins as the number that you need. Right now, the Warriors, again, they have 12 games left. They have 41 wins. If they go 10-2 down the stretch, there's no guarantee because the Clippers could win out and pass the Warriors, but the Warriors would have to. The only way the Warriors, if they go 9-3 the rest of the way, the only way that they don't get the 6 seed is if the Clippers essentially don't lose the rest of the way. And that would be 50 wins for the Warriors. And I would imagine the Clippers are not going to be perfect. I was talking about this earlier. The Clippers maybe being number 1 threat for the Warriors right now. The only difference is the Clippers have a much more difficult schedule than the T-Wolves do down the stretch, and then as the Warriors. Warriors and T-Wolves have relatively easy schedules down the stretch. The Clippers do not. But it's also difficult to gauge exactly what teams will be playing for in the final week of the regular season. You might have a Houston game on your schedule, as the Warriors do, but maybe they're locked into a playoff spot and they have nothing to play for and they want to rest teams. Maybe the Nuggets don't care if they're the 3 or the 4 and they rest Jokic. Not that the Warriors do have another one against Denver coming up, but point is, the schedule game is a little difficult this time of season because you don't know exactly what the motivation of every team is going to be down the stretch. Anyway, let's get back to our out-of-town NBA game of the night. Again, sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. Let's focus on Bulls and Lakers from LA. I already said it. I'll say it again. I think the Warriors should be rooting for the Lakers to win a lot of games down the stretch, because that makes it more likely that Houston would slip down to the 3 seed. Warriors, I think, are still most likely to be the 6. And I think if I could pick any singular matchup for the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs, I would pick Houston. So ideally, Lakers win, push Houston down to the 3. The Warriors hold on to the 6, and that is the first round matchup. As a result, I know it's difficult. I think Warrior fans should be rooting for the Lakers to knock off the Bulls in this one today. Anyway, this game tips off at 7:30 in LA tonight, so it'd be a bit of a rush to try to get down there now, but SFO can get you over to LA whenever you want, and maybe you want to plan a trip when the Warriors are back at Crypto.com Arena, and that happens one more time this regular season on April 3rd. That's at the end of this road trip, and SFO can get you down there for that game, no problem. And SFO, of course, can also get you down to LA and to see a Laker game, to see a Warrior Laker game, to see any kind of game down there whenever you want. That is our out-of-town NBA game of the night, sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. Okay, let's get to our Take It to the Bank prediction, which is brought to you by Fremont Bank, full-service banking, no compromises. I will go over 7.5 assists for Jimmy Butler in this one. He's had 10 and 12 assists in each of his last 2 games. 10 against Milwaukee without Steph when Steph rested. 12 versus Toronto on Thursday when Steph did not play in the fourth quarter. And now, again, without Steph tonight, likely will be without Steph on Tuesday. I don't know that for sure, but likely will be without Steph on Tuesday in Miami when Jimmy Butler makes his return to the Heat. But definitely no Steph tonight. And I think when Steph's out, a lot of us think that means Butler is going to take on a lot more of the scoring responsibility, and that's true. But I think in general, if Steph's out, and it's the same when Pods is out, it just means that Butler is going to have the ball in his hands a whole lot more, right? When Podziemski missed those 5 games, or when Steph sat out against Milwaukee, Butler essentially serves as the team's second point guard. Essentially, he plays the point guard in all of the non-Podziemski minutes. And even when both Podziemski and Jimmy Butler are on the floor together, Jimmy Butler oftentimes is the one initiating the offense and getting things going. So I think just in general, without Steph, yeah, you probably expect Jimmy to score more. I expect him to do a little bit more of everything. And the ball is going to be in his hands a whole lot more. So I feel comfortable with over 7.5 assists for Jimmy Butler today. And plus, he has said it over and over and over again. He loves to pass. This is what Steve Kerr said when asked if once Steph went down on Thursday late in that third quarter, if he needed to tell Jimmy it's his time to take over, or if Jimmy knew that himself. Here is Warriors head coach Steve Kerr postgame on Thursday about what Jimmy did or what he was asked of Jimmy once Steph Curry went down on Thursday.
Nope. He just understands the situation, and he wants the ball, and he asks for it in different areas and attacks. And, he did a fantastic job. His shot wasn't going tonight, but, he was creating everything for us. Triple-double, obviously. The defensive play of the game with the block shot at the rim. So it's the beauty of guys like Jimmy, Draymond. They can impact the game at such a high level regardless of what's happening with their offensive games.
The question was, did you have to have a conversation with Jimmy about time for you to step up once Steph went out? And he said, nope, Jimmy just knows it. That's what Jimmy does. And that's going to be Jimmy's mindset going into this game as well. I feel pretty confident in that. Warriors Live here on 95.7 The Game, presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you'll get the fastest internet to all of your devices. Again, this is game 1 of a 6-game road trip. It begins tonight in Atlanta. Game is tipping off in about 40 minutes or so right here on 95.7 The Game. I'll hand it over to Tim Roy in just a minute or so. But after tonight in Atlanta, the Warriors Tuesday in Miami. Then they're off until Friday in New Orleans. How about this as a road trip? Atlanta, Miami with a lot of days off, and New Orleans. Warriors have an opportunity to enjoy themselves on this road trip. But, of course, we know that task number 1 is just to win basketball games. Because one loss here, one loss there, that might be the difference in you being a 6 seed, maybe a 5 seed, and being in the play-in tournament. And at all costs, the Warriors want to avoid the play-in. All right, one last time, Warriors Live presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you'll get the fastest internet to all of your devices. I'll be back for Warriors wrap-up once this thing is over, probably sometime around 7 o'clock or so. But just keep it locked to 95.7 The Game, and you will not miss a second of the game or of our post-game show. Tim Roy is standing by live in Atlanta. Warriors basketball is coming up next. It's the Dubs and the Hawks from ATL. We're back with basketball next.
It's game time, Bay Area basketball fans.